my memoir is called Uncultured, and it is literally, sort of one woman's journey to leave a cult and leave the military in order to understand how, group dynamics and group behaviors work on all of us, and how we are all a product of how we are socialized, and we are all a product of the culture that we're in. And, I think it's such an amazing time in the country right now, in the world right now. I call it the culture wars.
Yeah.
We are having these extreme culture wars, these extreme shifts. And it's a lot of hard conversations, right?
Yeah.
A lot of really difficult. But the more we can understand, I think the way socialization works on us, the more we can actively create kind of at least what we think is good, good outcomes, good organizations for
Well, and self-awareness is such a big deal. I mean, that's really what this all comes down to, is being able to open your eyes and see it.
Yeah.
Identify
exactly.
it, right? And it's really funny that we talk about this, because when you say that, I think about Dave Chappelle's new special, right? I think about Joe Rogan. I think about all these guys that are talking about it from the humor sense and talking about cancel culture and all these other kinds of things that are going on right now in today's society, which is a very interesting time to be alive, no question. But we are talking about the psychological aspect of it from here, and really understanding, I mean, this really is a good conversation of nature versus nurture.
Yeah. And I actually love comedy as an example, right? Of, first of all, socialization, political activism, all of that. I think it's so funny. It's women are starting to come out now and be like, I just don't find male comics funny. And men can't fathom that.
Right.
And they also can't understand that that is not racism.
Right.
If we were keeping men out of comedy, that would be systemic racism, the way that happened with women. Right. And what happened for so long is men who controlled the entire comedy industry didn't find women funny.
Sure.
Well, of course not, because comedy is about life and you don't have that experience. So you just don't get it.
Right.
My husband and I have to have kind of a deal that we only watch non-white male comedians together because then we're kind of meeting in the middle.
There you go. Yeah.
Where female comics are too intense for him and white male comics are too unaware for me.
Yeah, right,
and so we have to
there's some good ones on both sides of the table for sure.
Yeah. No, and I think even if something makes you just you have to still listen to it and you have to still engage with those ideas.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you have why was the 2016 election such a big surprise?
Right. Yeah.
And because nobody was thinking of the other side as valid.
Well, and this really gets into a conversation of really just having the ideology that it's okay to hear somebody else's perspective.
Right.
But as a society, I think especially in the U.S., we're so trained that if you don't agree with my ideology, I hate you.
Yep.
And I will fight you.
Yeah.
What?
And it's exactly. And it's so, I think sort of I've described this as one of the things that was very useful in my life, was that once I got out of the cult and once I was able to realize how not normal and how not right everything that I'd ever been taught was, I became a lot more open-minded to any other point of view.
Absolutely.
Because everything is not normal. And
Right.
so, no, there is no normal.
Yeah.
Now
that's the quote right
I
there.
kind of
There is
joke
no
that
normal.
I'm perpetrating abnormality again with my daughter as I'm raising her in Brazilian Portuguese in America.
Yeah.
But I also think she's going to know that her experience isn't normal, which means other people's experiences that are different from hers are not wrong or weird.
Right.
They're just different.
Well, and I've met other people that never served, but they were military brats. So their parents were in the military. And of course, moving every 2 to 3 years is very normal for them. And living overseas or even being born overseas is very normal for them. And so they get introduced to that culture. And I do find those people are a lot more open to looking at differences and differences of opinion because they experienced it. They've seen it.
Yeah.
We've got all these people who are siloed here in the U.S. and they're living in their own little world and they don't really understand what's outside of their little world.
Yeah, exactly. And with American culture specifically, first of all, most people don't realize how sort of xenophobic and isolated we
Yeah.
are,
Oh,
right? That like we are super isolated unless you go out of your way to engage with other cultures and other ideas.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then we also have this perspective of, you know, everyone alive today has been a member of the kind of, you know, most important country in the world.
Right.
And so I've had these very interesting conversations with Americans, especially in the military. And it's almost like you don't understand how other people can love their country and their culture as much as we love our country and our culture.
Yeah.
Because we've always been able to have, which is basically false. We're not really number one on anything anymore, right? But we've always been able to have this fallback of like, oh, America is so amazing.
Right.
You know, and
It's
we
almost
don't
the brink.
tolerate cultural criticism from, I mean, even someone like me that grew up abroad, like it's a very fine line for me to walk, like criticizing American culture.
It's almost our brainwashing, right?
And
that
it
we are
is.
the best in the world.
And in reality, you know, you kind of want the immigrants. Like
Yeah.
they're the ones coming in with the outside perspective,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
every time. I think this, you know, I tell my clients this in organizations too. Like every time someone's like, why do you do things that way?
Yeah.
And you want to respond with, well, that's how we've always done it. That's your opportunity to actually think about, why do you do things this way?
Yeah, that's the most dangerous phrase. I've talked to so many people about that, and I hear it all the time because I ask that question. I like to question everything.
Yeah.
And so why are we doing it this way? This doesn't make sense to me. Help me understand your mindset, your ideology. What brought you to this point? And they're just like, well, that's how we've always done it. Like, all right, we need to go back and rethink this.
Yeah.
Right? It's straight up, like step one, rethink what we're doing here. Wow.
And that's how, I mean, you know, we're seeing it. Like, there's a million examples in industry
There are.
now of
there
like, you know, and or I say all the time, like, if you ask the wrong questions, you
Yeah.
get the wrong answers.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the examples I love is Uber.
Yeah.
You know, as long as people were asking the question of what do people want transportation,
Right.
you are only having like taxi services and other kinds of services. When I think Uber realized was what people want is to be able to call it on demand,
Yeah.
know how much money it's going to cost them,
Yep.
and sense of security, right? You and the driver know each other's names.
That's right.
And fixing that, it's like it wasn't really about transportation.
That's right.
It was about those other things.
That's right.
And fixing that is basically what's making taxi services obsolete.
You're right.
You know,
Absolutely.
which, by the way, taxi in some form, probably one of the oldest,
Right.
you know, city businesses in the world.
Yeah,
right?
and there's Ubers. It's funny you bring that up specifically because I have these conversations on a macro level with a lot of different people about there are Ubers entering every industry in the U.S. right now, and maybe even the world, and we're seeing every industry get transformed in ways that you can't say that's how we've done it before anymore. Because you will become obsolete. And entire businesses are having to close their doors because they're not willing to keep their finger on the pulse and move into the new culture of what's coming here.
Blockbuster.
Right?
Right?
That's a great example.
You know, and I have this other dream. Maybe one of your listeners will like steal this and build this.
Yeah.
But like things like Uber meets ethnic cool restaurant experience almost.
Yeah.
Like Uber. It's so like, you know, like I cook Brazilian food.
Right.
So what if like you could sign up to come to my house on a day that's available on my calendar and you and 8 other couples, you know, and you're going to pay $50 for, you know, the ambiance, the food, the music, a local caipirinha drink, you know, and like people
really
could
good
just
idea.
do that wherever,
It's
you know,
like,
and
it's like the reverse of Uber Eats, right? I'm not going to bring it to you.
Yeah,
You're gonna come to me.
exactly. And you know, like all the components exist, right?
Yeah.
You use Calendly or some booking software to just like only make it so when you're available. And I think like
That's
you
a
could
great
get
idea.
so many more cool experiences, and also deal with the issue that with, you know, I think a lot of sort of, you know, ethnic or multicultural, different cultural restaurants deal with, again, like if your client is white Americans, we trend to be a little bit scared of things we don't know.
Yeah, of course.
And so walking into a hole in the wall restaurant freaks people out.
Yeah.
You know, so like what's a way to shift? You know, the problem is not that we don't like the food. We love the food. The problem is like, how do we shift this to make this a more like comfortable experience for people to get? Because then, you know, one thing that we definitely know culturally is once people experience different cultures and different norms and different groups, you start to realize like, oh my God, there's just benefits to everything.
Absolutely.
You know, there's
That's
good
a
and
great
bad
idea.
to everything.
It's a great idea. Somebody out there needs to go make that.
Somebody steal
that's
it.
Perfect. Yeah. Go make it. All right. Wow. What an incredible backstory. I mean, you're right. You have such a unique, and I have an ideology that says adversity is what causes success or can cause success, right? It's being pressed. It's really being forced to do something extreme, right?
Yeah.
That really forces you to say, hey, I wasn't afraid of this. I had to go through it, and here I am, right? That experience is amazing.